Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be with you today, Eileen, and to do this interview on your book, Time to Fly. This is such an excellent book that we're actually going to talk about. But first, let me introduce Eileen. She's an author, speaker, philanthropist, impact investor, a yogi, and I've taken her yoga classes. She's amazing. She's a life, health, and wellness coach and a CEO of Fit Together.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the time.
Eileen, you have been amazing when I see you with people. You're the kind of person who walks through a room and makes friends with everyone, and not just friends, but you remember people's names. All of a sudden I see people laughing and at ease, and then all of a sudden people will be crying, or the vulnerability that you help people to feel comfortable to be inside of, because you bring that. It's amazing just to watch you. And we've been on retreat together. That's where I first met you, through my best friend Debbie Della Cuesta, and we were on the retreat, on your Time to Fly retreat, and that was just really an amazing, impactful. Everyone that was there, I know, was really impacted by the work that we did there and the deeper and embodied work that was part of this. And also looking into our grief. And one thing that we all have in common is grief. I mean, if you live life, you have your losses, smaller losses and really big losses. And in your book, Time to Fly, you bring in such an open-hearted, vulnerable way your losses, your triumphs. You bring a whole philosophy and way of being that you approached for you and your children in the loss that you had. I know you lost your sister at a young age, and she was the sister that you shared a room with for many years of your childhood. And then you lost Brian in a plane crash 3 days before Christmas. And I remember Debbie saying that she knew someone whose husband had just been in a plane crash. And I just remember tearing up and feeling devastated for whoever that was. And then to meet you all these years later, and to know what you went through and your children went through, was just heartbreaking, and also the resilience that you've shown and that you share with us. So your book is such a story of devastating loss and the gifts that you find along the way. And it's your attitude towards what you're in, and to be inside of the grief and surrender into it, and to be part of that was so touching as I was reading your book. And also looking at my own life and the times that I've really kind of fought against loss, and the times that I surrendered into it and allowed that vulnerability. And that's what you share throughout this book. And I actually want to read a part that is so amazing and connects with the work that I'm doing too, and the bringing in neuroscience and spirituality, and how we can be more of a healing presence on the planet. And I really think that your book is another avenue into how we heal ourselves, so we can be that calm and healing presence in the world. So this is in your darkest hours, in the midst of our darkest hours. How can any of us capture or receive that rare ray of sunshine, that warm reassurance? It seems to me our ancient ancestors knew part of the answer. Create space, allow stillness, come together, honor our dead and the realm we do not know. Yeah, in the mystery. Understanding that a rare glimpse of hope can be the start of a major shift, a new season. Listen, share stories, tell your truth, and trust in cycles and in something larger. Trust the universe. So with people who are...
It just gave me the chills. I was like, yeah.
I know. I've read your book a couple times and went back into things that I had underlined. I read it on my iPad too. So I have two different places where I have these notes. And just for people who are in grief, maybe, for whatever loss they've had. Can you talk to us about that? And that approach to looking into the grief as an opening?
Yeah. So one of the things that's coming to mind to share is, in my experience, and especially in the beginning, I think that paragraph, or what you just shared, actually is like encompasses the whole thing. But if I think of specific moments in time when I was experiencing it, and thinking about specifically right in the very beginning, is something that comes to mind is, and people talk about surrender. And honestly, in the beginning, to some degree, it was easy for me to surrender, because part of surrendering is being in the moment. And and just accepting what is. And when I went to the airport to pick Brian up, and it was, like you said, 3 days before Christmas, and our children were 4, 7, and 8 at the time. We were living actually out where you live, in Southern California, and we were going to visit my family. So he was playing Santa Claus. He had all the gifts. And so I went by myself to the airport to pick him up, because all the gifts were in the plane, and Santa had to keep up appearances. So anyway, and then obviously finding out when I arrived that his plane had gone down, and then a couple hours later finding out that he didn't survive. And in those moments, like obviously the shock of it all was like overwhelming, right? Like the people call it shock, and I was like, it was shock. My body was in shock, but there was in that moment, I could only be in the moment, because when I started thinking and remembering, I just couldn't be there. I just couldn't do it yet. I could not remember. I couldn't remember thoughts, and I could not always. I did some, but when I would like, oh my God, I would just start bawling, crying, like, oh my God, like we were just this, and we were just about to buy a house, and he just came to the kids, like things like I literally had just texted him, literally in the sky, like 17 minutes before his plane crashed. We had just said, we just had our last, so I would like, I can't go there. And I can't even go to the future, because I'm like, oh my God, that was completely overwhelming. What was I going to do without him? I can't live without him. And like, what, all the things, right? Like, how I parent without him, like he'll miss everything. Like, who am I going to like lay next to? Who am I going to have dinner with on Friday night? Like, so all of that was way too much. The past was way too much, and the future was way too much for me to focus my attention on. So my attention literally went to where I was. And then it was I did not expect. I just noticed so much peace there. I was like, okay, I'm just with my children. I'm with whoever I'm with. And really, what I had no idea to experience, it was like, there was so much love. Of course, like even the love you were sharing, I didn't even know you, but I felt that. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like the rippling effect of the love in this tragedy was just pouring. And I was just like, I could feel it when people would reach out to me. In a moment, I would get a text or a phone call, or during the memorials, people would just come up, and I just stayed with them. And I was like, there's just so much love. And I had never experienced anything that overwhelming. And so anyway, that was like the beginning, right, of my, like, I didn't know that this would be this way. And so anyway, I don't know. That was one story I was thinking to share as something often we get in when people are grieving, or when I was grieving, I should say, and human beings grieve, most of what we're grieving is the past and the future. We're not usually even, because in the moment, like, this is great. I've got a great chair, and I've got like a great conversation going on, and I've got like water, or, like, in the moment, we're often not, that's not what we're grieving, right? We're grieving some imagination of the past or the future. And when that takes us away, we often miss what's happening right in front of our eyes. And so, again, I did not really know that very like solidly. I'm like, I had heard about being present and the power of being present, and I'm like, but the lessons that were learned in my surrender to, I just can't even be in those spaces. And then training and development I had done leading up to that, and then have continued to do into the future, like since then, like all of it's been part of that journey of
right.
Yeah, growth.
And it's to be in this moment is so hard. And we can know about it cognitively, and we can be, okay, I'm here, and then off we go, right? But that was it sounds like such a profound time of bringing you in that moment. And I wonder, from all your experiences, I know you've done a lot of work through the years, and you continue, and you gift so much, and you do retreats, and you're doing so much around giving to other people and making this world a better place. What was it that sparked you to say, I want to write about my experience, to write this book?
That's a good story. Because the truth of the matter was, I have my undergraduate degree in management science and an MBA in finance. So like, writing was not my mode of operandum. Like, I never wanted to write a book. Like, there are people that are gifted and talented in writing, but that was never a dream of mine. And then after Brian passed, I got a lot of signs from him. And a lot of signs from my sister. And I think people who have lost people often, experience that. And because the veil, right, between this earthly world and what's beyond gets very thin, especially when people pass. Anyway, and so I would share, and I would also shared the beautiful synchronicities of how things were playing out, that I was like, okay, I am not in charge here. Like, how is it, for example, and I share the story in the book, but Brian died, plane crashed on the 22nd. The next day, my dad and my brother went out to the plane to kind of salvage what they could. It was just in a field like 2 miles from the airport. And while they were there, the airport staff said, someone reached out, this gentleman named Al Gore reached out, and he wants to connect with Eileen, and he's a funeral director. And my instinct was like, that's really strange that this is like an ambulance chasing funeral director. Like, how does that work? Like, wow. And my brother was like, no, I don't think so. Like, I really think you should reach out to him. And I did. And he's like, Eileen, I'm a pilot. I landed a half an hour before Brian was supposed to land, and I want to take care of all the funeral expenses. And I was like,
wow, okay. Gives me chills.
Yeah. And then it was Christmas, and he was like the perfect person to like take me through this, because as a 41-year-old young woman with 3 little children burying her 38-year-old husband, like, this was not like anything we had planned for. We never had any of those conversations. Like, how would you like, although he did joke one time about like wanting to be stuffed, like taxidermed. And I was like, oh yeah, right. But like, we didn't have any of those conversations. So he was so generous about the way he carried me through that. And I definitely think people that are in that business are or definitely have a calling for it. But anyway, he said, you need to do Christmas and we'll plan the memorial afterwards. And so the day after Christmas, we get on a call, and I share this also in the book. Like, I grew up Catholic. I'm a yoga teacher. Like, I've studied, and Brian and I just were not churchgoers. And so like having sort of a traditional Catholic funeral did not feel authentic, although I completely believe in lots of the thing the Catholic Church believes in, but not everything, or whatever. That's another story. But so we wanted a celebration. I wanted a celebration of life for him. And this woman was like, well, how about the Baltimore Museum of Industry? I didn't even know a place like that existed. It's a business museum. Brian was a serial entrepreneur, and it had a twin engine plane hanging from the ceiling. And Brian was flying a twin engine. And I was like, so now I have a pilot funeral director. I have a business museum with an airplane hanging from it. And I was not forcing anything. And these things were just being handed to me. And I was sharing those stories and many more stories like that. And people were like, oh my God, Eileen, you have to write a book. You have to write a book. And I heard it enough times that I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to write a book. And then that book took 7 years to actually come to life. And what I didn't know at the time, when I said I would write a book, was actually that I hadn't yet lived the whole story that wanted to be told in the book. And so I had many fits and starts of writing, and I would hire people to help me and meet with coaches and like whatever. I did lots of things to like write my book. And then I would put it away. And then someone would ask me, hey, how's that book going? And I was like, it's going. And it wouldn't let me go, right? Like, I think a lot of people have that experience of like, you just need to do it. Like, and I was like, okay, fine. I surrender. Like, I just surrendered to the process. I was like, okay. And I luckily connected through with an amazing human being, Christine Fadden, who really helped me write the book. And she's just an artist at using words, and was able to like translate my story. And it was an amazing partnership. But the other piece of it was that I did not know at the time when I said I would write the book that my whole healing journey, including what I created, which was a new family, not to replace or fix my family that was broken when Brian died, but I fell in love again and created a new son at 46. And it was actually finally when I was pregnant with Zach that I knew. I was like, oh, this is the full arc. This is the story that people need to hear. This is the hope that people need to. This was the story I was looking for when it happened to me. I was like, who the heck made it out? And I want to know how. And then once I had lived it, I was like, oh yeah. And then it just flowed. I was like, okay, here we go. So
yeah. I mean, just such a testament to things happen in their own time, when it's ready, but also throughout the book, the hope that you did have, and the willingness to see the openings and the light and the moments of transformation, the moments of creating space and holding your children. Even, gosh, I went through infertility and did not have a child, and was so with you in all of the shots and all of the things that you had to go through, and the months and months and months to go through all of that to create this beautiful human being for Mike and you to have, and how you talked about that bringing together the family. I think you were talking about being the Incredibles of the Incredibles.
So, and it is one of the things I really love to highlight about the book, and not even just, it was great that it was successful. Like it is, I am very blessed. And like Zach wanted to come to Earth. But that was a whole transformation, right? Like of myself and what I was willing and open to. And funny enough, our good friend Debbie, one day on a coaching call with her, she asked me this one little question, because I was clear that I never wanted to have any more children. I had 3 children. I had tied my tubes. I had caused my own infertility. I was like, I'm done. I was 37 when I had my last baby with Max. I was grateful they were all healthy. I was like, we are not going to rock the boat. Like, I hate being pregnant. It's like not a joy. I envy those that like, oh, it's so great. I'm like, what is great about this? Your hormones are raging. You're like, you can't really move. Like, I don't know, whatever. But some people love it. I do not. And I was clear. And one day in that coaching call, and Mike had never been married and didn't have children. And I really got like, if the tables were turned, I would want to try. Like I would want that. Like, why would, that's not unreasonable. But I'm like, okay, but like I'm now 42 and like, it's not going to happen. Like, even if we wanted it to happen, like nobody gets pregnant after that, right? Like nobody does.
You were convinced it couldn't happen.
I was totally convinced it couldn't happen and totally not wanting. And she asked, okay, back to the question she asked, she's like, but what if exploring this is what the relationship wants? And I was like, girl, you think I should actually look? And,
which is so interesting because it's not about what you wanted or what Mike wanted, but it's what the relationship needed, and the retreats talking about that third that's here in a relationship. Yes. There's you, there's I, and then what the relationship.
The we, the we in between us and so it was only in that opening that I was able to like stop the chatter. Okay, Eileen, let's put down what I want, like let's stop like, begrudging what he wants, right? Or whatever. And just like, look. And I was like, well, let's just look, because let's just find out. Because the truth of the matter is people do have babies later in life and maybe I can. And every doctor appointment I went to was like, yes, it's not likely, but it's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. And then I really looked, I was like, okay, if I'm willing, right, to go, what am I really willing? And I was like, well, what I really would love, like if I could just like magic wand it, we would have our baby, like Mike and I's baby. Cause I looked at surrogate and I looked at using donor eggs and I looked at all the possibilities, but I was like, all of those were possible. And some of them, we actually did go down that route for a little while, but what we really wanted, what we wanted was our own baby.
Right.
And it is also like, like it was a God sign. I'll tell a little bit of the story, but a little bit more about the story, because I feel like it's like one of those like miracles, true.
Yeah.
But I'd gone through months of infertility treatments. And then I actually decided, okay, I got pregnant for like a weekend and I was like, oh, good job, Eileen, you did it. Like you got pregnant with your baby. Now let's move on. Cause I was like, your eggs are not good. But you tried, you gave it the good college try. So let's do a donor egg round. And we did, and it failed. And I was like, well, everyone said that was going to work. And so we were like, okay, we'll do another donor egg round. And I went in, for anyone who's been through fertility, go to a lot of doctor's appointments. And I went in for they call it the baseline, where you're basically about to start your cycle to hopefully get pregnant. And that month they look at your own body and they're like, you have like a lot of eggs growing, because you don't just get one, even though one usually is the one that ovulates, but normally you get a lot. And I went to lunch and kind of like the book, like I was like, God, maybe I should try one more time, even though I'd already done a year like I'd already been at this for a year, and this is like
that's a lot of shots. That's a lot of injections.
Yeah, and it's a trap. Yeah, and it's a trap because you're like, am I being foolish? Is this like, am I just going to waste more money? Is this just going to be harder on my body? Whatever. And I was like, but it wouldn't let me go. And I was like, okay. And anyway, so I was with my girlfriend, Nina, who also has since passed, but she's like, I don't know, Eileen, I just think you should try one more time. And I texted my doctor and she called me immediately and she's like, let's go for it one more time. And that one more time was big. We only had one. That whole, like, you only need one. I hated when people said that. I was like, I want lots. But we only needed one. We were very, very, very blessed and lucky. And just to do the full synchronicity story, and we didn't even obviously know this at the time, we got pregnant, but Brian died on December 22nd, which was the winter solstice, which is the darkest, shortest day of the year. And Zach's birthday is on the summer solstice, the brightest, longest day of the year. I was like, you can't even make that up.
That's amazing. That's when you know you have to write a book.
Exactly. I was like, yeah. And there's so many great synchronicities that I do share, but also my journey of like, how did I clear that space within myself to be able to hear it? Because it's happening all the time. And there are many times that I don't hear any of it. I'm like, I'm stuck. So like, and I share some of those moments as well. So it's not like all Pollyanna, it's so great, but I do have access to it. And try to share my own journey in the hopes that is inspiration for others to on their journey, which is not going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a light in the darkness for a lot of people to read this book, but also beyond that, I mean, to not be in grief and to read the book, there's so much inspiration in there and so much of another lens to look at the world and to look at even our, everyday small losses. I know you just lost your cousin and I'm so sorry, just on 2 weeks ago or so.
Oh yeah. Like
not even 2 weeks
today.
A week ago. Oh my gosh.
Or maybe it was, I don't even know. Time is going. No. Yeah. It was a week ago today. And that, just when you think you've learned all your lessons, right? Fear not, there's more. And yeah, that he was such a courageous person. And when we talk about surrender, and I talk about surrender in my book, but like, so his long story short is he was diagnosed with leukemia, acute myeloid leukemia, which is a very aggressive leukemia, about 20 months ago. And he thankfully caught it immediately, but it's aggressive. So they went immediately and did treatment, and he went through a stem cell transplant, which, if you don't know, is a incredibly brutal process because they basically kill your own immunity and tear you down with chemo and radiation. They try to kill all of your own white blood cells because leukemia attacks your ability to fight any kind of infection. And then if it's killed, like all that's killed, then they can give you a stem cell transplant, and then you create new ones without the leukemia. And that worked for a year. And then he has a mutating, like a rare mutating version. So it came back. But he did not, he's 52, and he loved his family so much that it was like a possibility for him to do it again. And as like maybe this match, even though that was 100% match, maybe this match. So they even went more aggressively, and he was willing to do all of that. And this time it only lasted 3 months. And then he was looking for more treatments, and he was willing, right? He was like, I'm here. I love my family. I want to be here. I was willing. And then about a month ago, the doctor said, I'm sorry, like, it's just too aggressive. But that's when like the real courage show up for me, like brings me tears, because I had no idea. Like he surrendered, like the ultimate surrender, you know, because mostly what we're afraid of is dying. You know, we're afraid of dying in general, but we're also mini afraid of dying. That's what keeps us stuck. We're afraid to die to what we need to die to have what's coming next. And so as I watched him, and he was so generous, and I'm a McGuire, that's my first name, my first last name, and he's my first cousin, and McGuire cousins are tight. And he allowed for us to come and be with him. And he didn't throw a fit, and he wasn't like, woe is me. He was hilarious. All the McGuires are pretty funny too. Like he was cracking jokes. And he knew, it wasn't like he was pretending like, I'm going to like beat this. He knew time was short. And, you know, the stories were just endless of the humor that he brought, and the grace that he brought, and the presence that he brought. And I was like, I just witnessing it and being like, his faith, right? And that this isn't it. Like, this is it for here, right? This is what we get to experience on earth, but there's so much more that we can't see or aren't present to or are disconnected to often. But he had deep faith in that. And it was beautiful. It was so sad and so loving and so beautiful. And so, you know, talk about surrender. He is an example for all of us. Anyway, thank you for letting me share that, because that's really on my mind, and I am sharing it with people because I was like, I've never seen anything like that. And I know he's not the first one to ever do that, but I had never had that kind of, first of all, I've never been called to have that kind of courage in that way. Or at least I don't know that I have. Maybe we all are, you know, as I actually think about that statement, we all are we actually all are called to have that type of courage. We just aren't all faced. It's not always just like in our day-to-day lives, and we're just kind of mostly ignoring that we're all going to die.
Right. Which is such an amazing reminder to all of us, really. And I've been at the bedside of my brother-in-law, and lost my mother actually 4 years ago. The anniversary is tomorrow. So, having that kind of loss is a reminder of living more in this moment and surrendering to what is. And there's such power in this moment. Thomas Hubel talks about what keeps us from this moment is like our fear and also our traumas from before. So whatever is taking us away from, driving us away from this moment, we can open up to that. If we do and surrender to it, then we allow more healing and light to come in, which creates more wholeness in ourselves, and to me radiates out to everyone that's around me, and also the traumas that come through us from our ancestors or from intergenerational loss and trauma and the hardships and going forward into the world. And you really, in your book, it feels like you just open to that. So that's even why I really wanted to read that paragraph of, hey, our ancestors knew how to create space and to bring this in and to be here and be with it.
Yeah. One of the things, I feel like the Western or whatever, culturally, like we've lost, at least in the Western world, we've lost a lot of the wisdom of the passing and the dead and the spiritual realms. And so it does cause a lot of fear. Like we're disconnected from those practices. And, you could pick a religion, any religion, and they have beautiful, well thought out spiritual practices for allowing the dead to transition. But we don't really lean into those or don't take we just I don't know why we're doing this, but we're just so afraid of the thing that's so inevitable.
Right.
And
exactly.
so it's just kind of funny. that fear. And it's interesting. My sister, and I'm going to forget her name right now, Nurse somebody, but she's on YouTube or whatever, and she's trying to alter the conversation about death, and she's a hospice nurse, and she's like, we are designed to die, just like we were designed to be born. Like our body knows what to do. Like it's natural. It is a natural process. We naturally know how to get birth, and then we get epidurals and we like manage it a little bit. Same way on the way out, right? Like our body does know what to do to die. And it often isn't as painful as we think, right? Like, anyway, the point just being something that's so natural in our human experience, is so feared. And it does impact everything, really.
Yeah.
So I am, one of the interests in writing this book is to alter the conversation about death, but also to alter the conversation about life, because it is time to fly, right? I don't know the glare on my computer screen, but like, this is it. This is your human experience.
Life after loss too. And that's why I wanted to start with everyone has grief. If we live long enough, we're going to lose people and we're going to die as well. And that is the truth. And, in existentialism, death gives meaning to life.
Yeah.
Actually helps us to live more on what I like to call the razor's edge of the moment. Like if we really acknowledge that we only have so much time. And I just went through breast cancer in the last couple of years. And so that was a wake-up call to me too. And it's like, wow, am I on track with where I want to be? What else needs to come into my life from that? So your book is definitely so inspirational for that. I wanted to ask about why the flip up of the page. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, when I was designing my book cover, I wanted something that you like, when you saw it, you'd like want to touch it.
Yeah. So I want to flip it up. I want to
like you want to touch it. I don't know, whatever. That's what I wanted. But what I love about that and why that's important to me, and there's like multiple pages, right? It's like stacked pages. And my name, right, is Eileen Robertson Hamra. And this is actually Brian's airplane that we digitized into cartooned it. But it was November 48 Bravo Sierra. And when that plane died, when Brian died and when that plane crashed, I had no idea that the next page of my story would have Hamra. Like I had no idea. I didn't want that. I was not looking for that. So many people are like, oh, your intention and create your life and all that's amazing work. But sometimes there's something coming for you that you cannot imagine, that you don't even want, dream, or desire, that is better than you could have ever imagined. And that's not what you want to, like, it's almost like, it's not something that's present. And it's almost sometimes hard to even say that because people are like, well, does that mean like you're happy that Brian died? I'm like, no, that doesn't mean that. It's both. And I'm like, there was nothing I could do about Brian dying. It's what's so. He's no longer walking this earthly plane. And if he was, we'd probably still be married and still living where it was warm in California, which would be nice, but we don't. But I love my life. Like, I love being a Hamra. I love being Mike's wife. I love being a mom to 4 kids instead of 3. I love all the work that I was not doing. I'm doing retreats now. I'm investing in companies now. I was on my way to doing that work or doing some of the work in prep for that work. But like all of that has come since.
So tell us more about that, the legacy of Brian, really, and the legacy that you're putting out there, leaving. And when I say legacy, it's not just for after you're gone, but living the legacy now. Like we can live into our legacy and what we're creating and wanting to go out in ripples across time.
Yeah, when Brian died, and I think this was something that did help me heal, because we had a very strong connection and we were in love. Like, thank God, actually, like I might have had different work to do. I would just have different work to do. I had plenty of work to do when he died, but we were in a good spot and we were aligned, and we had work to do. Like, he was in the solar energy industry, and he really saw it as, transforming the planet. It wasn't about putting a solar system up on Whole Foods or, out in Nevada in solar farms. And he really saw that, like, we needed to do something for our planet, because our planet, what we were doing was not working. And I think it's pretty clear that what we're doing to our planet's not working. But he had this just huge vision. He was a visionary for sure. And I was like, and he was at work, he was like meeting around the world, and he was like, he had the capacity to do that and the connections. And I was like, what? It just felt like the plug was pulled. I was like, you had a lot of work to do. Where did you go?
He was making a huge impact. I hear even Al Gore sent his condolences.
Yeah.
So, he was connected.
Yeah, he was in the movement, and in the late 2004, 2003, 4, and he was working, and he was at work with partners and all of that. And so anyhow, when he passed, I was like, we cannot let what he was up to die. I just can't. I'm like, and I'm not the only one, right? Like, there were so many things about him, what he was committed to and his legacy and what he was creating in the world. I was like, okay, you're going to take care of it from the other side. I'll take care of it over here because I'm still here. And so I felt like we had a partnership. And he still comes in time to time, with his little like God signs or little Brian signs, and which I love and I don't always get. So people that don't get them, don't worry, like, whatever. It's not always. But anyway, so that legacy, and then, allowing me to open up to what I'm here for, right? Which is the same. And really it is the transformation of what we know is possible for human beings. And as we constantly evolve, and I love that. And part of that is being human, right? And being in your bodies, and having practices that allow for that. And you do a lot of this amazing somatic work, and I do a lot of yoga, which are completely synchronistic. They're just different language for, just like all the religions point to the same thing. A lot of this body work all points and have different facets, and it all works together. It all fits together. Hence the name of my company. Which is
awesome when we do retreats together, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us about the retreat. So you do Time to Fly, and I've been part of that. And then Loving with Wisdom. We just did this was it May? No, May. Was Costa Rica last year. We did January.
Yeah, and in January. I know. Where does the time go? Yeah, and we've got one of each scheduled. We've got Time to Fly scheduled for October, and another Loving with Wisdom scheduled for next March. And I'm creating another retreat with Christine Fadden, who I mentioned earlier. And it's an author's retreat, because just like I knew my story needed to get out of me. And initially it was like, if it's only for me and my own personal healing, I'm going to do it for that, because I would not let me go. And then I'm like a little type A sometimes. I'm like, well, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. And like, I want it to be readable and enjoyable and like useful. So that's what I created. But I know there are people that need, and I want their stories out there. Like we need stories of possibility, stories of hope, stories of courage, stories of transformation. We need stories like that, because if you got plenty of the other.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we do need more of this. We need more feel-good stories too, and ones that are real, like that are deep into the human experience.
Yeah.
You know?
So
and
Christine and I are creating space for those people, and it's a writers, authors retreat. And it's
you don't have to be a writer and author yet.
You can be. It could have been your dream, or it could be one of those things that you know you need to do, and you have been unwilling to surrender yet. This is your opportunity to surrender to the story that's wanting, because that is how it occurred for me. But I've already talked to several people that are like, yeah, they're in. They're like, this won't let me go. This won't let me go. And so it's going to be a small retreat. We only have 10 spots.
Nice. Around that giant table in Mexico. Yeah. That's a perfect spot to write. Yeah. But I would love to go. I didn't have other things that I needed to take care of at this point.
There'll be more. Yes.
There's always more. There'll be more.
There's always more. I love being on retreat with people. It's definitely a gift. It's there was a time when I said, I was like, gosh, if I could just like hang out with my friends and like have good conversations and exercise, like that would be my like perfect life. Like that, if I could get paid and do that and like somehow justify that to like hang out with friends and exercise together. So it's why I teach the yoga. I also take people on hikes. Like I love creating adventure. So that'll be a part of it as well. And it's a part of each of our retreats. Cause part of our retreats is also just being in nature. So,
and health and well-being. I mean, the retreats really bring in the well-beingness from a holistic place. Yeah. In all the ways.
All the ways.
So this has been fabulous time with you. Thank you so much for doing this interview with us. Just fabulous book. Again, Time to Fly, Life and Love After Loss. And you can find it on Amazon, and we'll have the links for you so you can jump right on and get your copy, either a hard copy or you can get your Kindle copy. And you also have
get
your audiobook.
Yeah, yes, audiobook. And it's me reading. And I'm a little bit nasally because I'm at the end of a cold, so my voice is a little bit better on the Audible.
So. Your voice is perfect. And yeah, the Audible is such a lovely way to listen to stories too, because that's, as human beings, that's what we knew. That's part of our ancestral heritage, right? Is the spoken story. So I love that you did that yourself. So many authors give it to someone else to record. And I know it's hard and it's a lot of work. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I know that just came out, so that's exciting. So thank you so much, Eileen. I appreciate your giving to the world in all the ways that you do, and I appreciate your friendship. And I'm so happy that we had a chance to do this today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share in your space.
Absolutely. Thank you.